The US-China trade war has entered a new and perilous phase, with tensions escalating to unprecedented levels. On April 10, 2025, China announced a sweeping 34% tariff on all goods imported from the United States. This move is seen as a direct response to the recent actions taken by the US government. This dramatic escalation follows the recent imposition of tariffs on Chinese goods by the US, which had already strained the economic relations between the two countries. The move has sent shockwaves through the global economy, raising fears of a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economies. Investors are on edge, and markets around the world are reacting with volatility. The tariffs are the latest salvo in an ongoing battle over trade practices, intellectual property, and technological dominance. Both nations accuse each other of unfair practices and are unwilling to back down. The trade war, which began under the Trump administration, has been marked by periods of uneasy truce punctuated by escalations. Each side has taken turns imposing tariffs and other trade barriers, leading to a tit-for-tat cycle. The current situation represents a significant escalation, with both sides seemingly entrenched in their positions. Diplomatic efforts have so far failed to bring about a resolution, and the rhetoric from both capitals has grown increasingly hostile. The stakes are incredibly high. Businesses on both sides of the Pacific are feeling the pressure, and the uncertainty is causing many to rethink their strategies. A protracted trade war could have devastating consequences for both the US and Chinese economies. It could lead to job losses, higher prices for consumers, and a slowdown in economic growth. It could also disrupt global supply chains, increase prices for consumers, and undermine the rules-based trading system that has underpinned global prosperity for decades. The interconnected nature of today's economy means that the impact will be felt far beyond the borders of the two countries involved. The world is watching anxiously as the two superpowers lock horns in a high-stakes game of economic chicken. The outcome of this conflict will have profound implications for the global economy and the future of international relations. As the situation continues to unfold, the international community is left to ponder the long-term effects of this trade war. Will cooler heads prevail, or are we on the brink of a new era of economic conflict? Only time will tell. China's retaliatory tariffs target a wide range of American goods, carefully chosen for their economic and political significance. Among the hardest hit are agricultural products, particularly soybeans. Soybeans are a major U.S. export to China, and the tariffs threaten to devastate American farmers who rely heavily on this market. The automotive industry is another casualty of the escalating trade war. American car manufacturers, already facing challenges from the global chip shortage and supply chain disruptions, are now grappling with the added burden of these new tariffs. The tariffs make American cars more expensive in the Chinese market, potentially pricing them out of competition. The technology sector, a key area of contention in the US-China rivalry, is also feeling the heat. Tariffs on electronics, including semiconductors, smartphones, and computers, will likely disrupt supply chains and increase costs for both American companies and consumers. The targeted nature of these tariffs underscores the high stakes of this trade war. China is strategically aiming at sectors that are crucial to the American economy, seeking to inflict maximum economic pain and exert political pressure. The impact of the escalating trade war is being felt far beyond the borders of the US and China. Global markets have reacted with a mixture of fear and uncertainty, with stock markets around the world experiencing significant declines. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, a key indicator of American economic health, has plummeted over 1,000 points in recent days. The instability in the financial markets reflects growing concerns about the potential for a global recession. The trade war is disrupting global supply chains, increasing costs for businesses, and dampening consumer confidence. These factors are contributing to a slowdown in economic activity, raising fears of a broader economic downturn. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has warned that the escalating trade tensions pose a significant threat to global economic growth. The organization has urged both the US and China to resolve their differences through dialogue and cooperation, emphasizing the importance of a rules-based trading system for global prosperity. The world is holding its breath, watching anxiously as the trade war between the two economic giants threatens to derail the global economy. The stakes are incredibly high, and the outcome of this conflict will have far-reaching consequences for years to come. Section 4. The Biden administration's dilemma: diplomacy or retaliation. The Biden administration finds itself facing a difficult dilemma as the trade war with China escalates. The stakes are high, and the decisions made in the coming months could have long-lasting impacts on both nations and the global economy. On the one hand, there is pressure to respond forcefully to what is seen as Chinese aggression and unfair trade practices. Many argue that a strong stance is necessary to protect American jobs and industries from being undermined by China's economic policies. On the other hand, there is a recognition that further escalation could have severe consequences for the American economy and global stability. Economists warn that a prolonged trade war could lead to increased prices for consumers, disrupted supply chains, and a potential global recession. The administration is under intense scrutiny from both sides of the aisle, with lawmakers and interest groups weighing in on the best course of action. The political landscape is deeply divided, making it challenging to find a consensus. Some are calling for a more confrontational approach, advocating for increased tariffs and stricter enforcement of trade rules. They believe that only by standing firm can the U.S. force China to change its practices. Meanwhile, others urge restraint and a return to diplomacy. They argue that open dialogue and negotiation are the best ways to resolve differences and avoid a damaging trade war. The business community, caught in the crossfire, is urging the administration to find a swift resolution to the trade war. Business leaders highlight the damage it is inflicting on American companies and workers, with many industries facing uncertainty and financial strain. The impact on American companies and workers is significant, with some businesses forced to close and others struggling to stay afloat. The ripple effects are felt across the economy, from small businesses to large corporations. President Biden has signaled a willingness to engage in dialogue with China, emphasizing the importance of finding common ground. However, he has also stressed that the U.S. will not back down from defending its economic interests and ensuring fair trade practices. The administration is exploring a range of options, including targeted sanctions, to address specific issues without escalating the conflict further. These measures aim to hold China accountable while minimizing the broader economic impact. Targeted sanctions are one of the tools being considered, focusing on areas where China is perceived to be violating trade agreements or engaging in unfair practices. These sanctions would be designed to pressure China to change its behavior without causing widespread economic disruption. Increased investment in domestic manufacturing is another strategy, aimed at reducing reliance on Chinese imports and boosting the American economy. By strengthening domestic industries, the U.S. hopes to create jobs and enhance its economic resilience. Strengthening alliances with other countries is also a key component of the administration's strategy. By working with allies, the U.S. aims to build a united front to counter China's growing economic influence and promote fair trade practices globally. The path forward is fraught with challenges. Navigating the complexities of international trade and diplomacy requires careful consideration and strategic planning. Finding a balance between protecting American interests and preventing a catastrophic trade war will require careful diplomacy, strategic thinking, and a willingness to compromise. The decisions made now will shape the future of U.S.-China relations and the global economic landscape for years to come. As the Biden administration navigates this complex issue, the world watches closely, hoping for a resolution that promotes stability, fairness, and prosperity for all. Section 5. American manufacturers brace for impact supply chains and rising costs. American manufacturers are bracing for impact as the trade war with China intensifies. The escalating tariffs and trade barriers are creating a ripple effect across various industries, from automotive to electronics and even the food sector. Companies that once relied on a steady flow of affordable components and raw materials from China are now scrambling to find new suppliers. This sudden shift is not only disrupting production schedules but also leading to increased operational costs. The tariffs are disrupting established supply chains, forcing companies to find alternative sources for raw materials and components. This search for new suppliers is often fraught with challenges, as businesses must ensure that these new sources meet their quality standards and can deliver on time. Additionally, the logistics of setting up new supply chains can be complex and expensive, involving new contracts, shipping arrangements, and sometimes even changes in manufacturing processes. This process is proving to be costly and time-consuming, putting a strain on businesses already grappling with the lingering effects of the pandemic and global supply chain disruptions. The pandemic had already exposed vulnerabilities in the global supply chain, and the trade war is exacerbating these issues. Companies are finding it difficult to maintain their production levels, leading to delays and backlogs that affect their ability to meet customer demand. The tariffs are also contributing to rising production costs, as companies face higher prices for imported goods. These increased costs are not limited to raw materials but also include higher shipping and logistics expenses. As a result, businesses are forced to make tough decisions, such as whether to absorb these costs or pass them on to consumers. These increased costs are being passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices for a wide range of products, from cars and electronics to clothing and food. This price hike is noticeable in everyday shopping, where consumers are finding that their money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. The impact is felt across all demographics, but it is particularly hard on low-income families who spend a larger portion of their income on essentials. This is further fueling inflation, which is already at a multi-decade high, squeezing household budgets and dampening consumer spending. The rising cost of living is forcing families to cut back on discretionary spending, which in turn affects businesses that rely on consumer purchases. The cycle of rising costs and reduced spending is creating a challenging economic environment. The trade war is creating a climate of uncertainty for American manufacturers, making it difficult to plan for the future. Long-term investments and strategic planning are being put on hold as companies navigate the immediate challenges. This uncertainty is not just about the tariffs themselves but also about potential retaliatory measures from other countries, which could further complicate the business landscape. Companies are delaying investments, scaling back expansion plans, and in some cases, laying off workers as they try to navigate the turbulent economic landscape. The impact on the workforce is significant, with many employees facing reduced hours or job losses. This not only affects the individuals and their families but also has a broader impact on the local economies where these businesses operate. The situation is particularly challenging for small and medium-sized businesses, which often lack the resources and flexibility of larger corporations to absorb the impact of tariffs and supply chain disruptions. These businesses are the backbone of the American economy, providing jobs and services in communities across the country. However, their limited financial reserves make it difficult for them to weather prolonged economic challenges. Many of these businesses are facing an existential threat, with the potential for widespread closures and job losses if the trade war continues to escalate. The loss of these businesses would not only be a blow to the economy, but also to the social fabric of the communities they serve. The stakes are high and the need for a resolution to the trade tensions is more urgent than ever. America is no stranger to protests. But something feels different this time. Across the country, from bustling cities to quiet towns, a wave of demonstrations has erupted. This is the hands-off movement, and it's about much more than just politics. Millions are taking to the streets, united by a single powerful message: stop attacking our welfare system. These aren't just isolated incidents. This is a nationwide outcry against policies perceived as harmful, especially to the most vulnerable among us. The protests are a direct response to the current administration's agenda. From healthcare to education, from environmental protection to social safety nets, drastic changes are underway. For many Americans, these changes feel like attacks, leaving them anxious and afraid. They see their access to vital services being chipped away, and they're worried about the future. This anxiety isn't limited to any one group. It's a collective unease that's bringing people together from all walks of life. The scale of these protests is unprecedented. People from all 50 states have participated, turning out in numbers not seen in recent history. This isn't just a coastal elite phenomenon either. The heartland is rumbling too, with protests erupting in cities and towns across the country. The message is clear. This is a national movement, fueled by a deep-seated fear that the American dream is slipping away for many. What's driving this widespread anger and fear? At the heart of it is a sense of betrayal. Many Americans feel that the government, instead of working for them, is working against their interests. They see policies designed to benefit the wealthy few while leaving the majority struggling to make ends meet. This sentiment, coupled with the speed and scope of the policy changes, has ignited a firestorm of resistance. The hands-off. Protests are a testament to the power of collective action and a stark reminder that when people feel unheard, they will make their voices heard. The term welfare often evokes complex emotions, but at its core it represents a safety net, a lifeline for millions of Americans facing difficult circumstances. It's the help a single mother relies on to feed her children. It's the support that allows a senior citizen to afford their medication. It's the difference between having a roof overhead and being out on the street. The current wave of protests highlights a growing fear. This vital safety net is under threat. Proposed cuts to public welfare programs are causing widespread anxiety. For many, these programs aren't just abstract line items in a budget, they are a lifeline. They represent the difference between stability and despair. The proposed cuts threaten to push millions deeper into poverty, leaving them without the support they need to survive. This fear is palpable in the streets, fueling the anger and desperation driving the protests. One of the most contentious issues is the proposed restructuring of Medicaid. This program provides healthcare to millions of low-income Americans, including children, pregnant women, and people with disabilities. Critics argue that the proposed changes would result in millions losing access to essential healthcare services. They point to the potential for increased medical debt, untreated illnesses, and even preventable deaths. The fear is that these cuts will disproportionately impact the most vulnerable, those who can least afford to lose this lifeline. Another major concern is the potential impact on Social Security. This program is a cornerstone of retirement security for millions of Americans. The proposed changes, while presented as reforms, have sparked fears of benefit cuts and a weakening of the program's long-term solvency. For seniors living on fixed incomes, even small reductions in benefits can have devastating consequences. The protests reflect a deep-seated anxiety about the future of Social Security and the potential for millions to face financial hardship in their golden years. Medicaid and Social Security are not just government programs, they are threads woven into the fabric of American society. They embody a promise that we, as a nation, will take care of our most vulnerable citizens. Medicaid ensures access to health care for low-income families, children, pregnant women, the elderly, and people with disabilities. It's often the only safety net for those who can't afford private insurance. Social Security provides a financial cushion for over 65 million retirees, disabled workers, and their families. The proposed cuts signify a potential unraveling of the social contract. For those who rely on Medicaid, the cuts mean sacrificing crucial medical care. Imagine a single mother forced to choose between food and medicine for her sick child. The consequences of these cuts are real and potentially devastating. Social Security cuts strike fear into the hearts of millions of retirees. For many, Social Security isn't a luxury. It's the difference between a dignified retirement and poverty. These cuts threaten to erode the financial security of seniors, forcing them back into the workforce or into homelessness. The protests reflect a growing concern that the promise of a secure retirement is being broken. The anger and fear surrounding these proposed cuts are palpable. People see them as a betrayal, a sign that the government is turning its back on its citizens. The hands-off. Protests are a desperate plea to protect these vital programs. The message is clear. Healthcare and retirement security are rights that must be protected for all Americans. Section 4. Beyond the pocketbook, immigration, environment, and more. While the proposed cuts to public welfare programs are a major catalyst for the hands-off protests, the anger runs deeper. It's fueled by a growing sense that the current administration is pursuing an agenda that marginalizes and disenfranchises large segments of the population. From immigration to environmental protection, from LGBTQ plus rights to education, people are witnessing a rolling back of progress, a return to policies they thought were consigned to the past. The administration's stance on immigration has been particularly contentious. Increased border security measures, stricter immigration enforcement, and a reduction in refugee admissions have all been met with fierce opposition. Protesters see these policies as inhumane and discriminatory, tearing families apart and demonizing immigrants. They argue that the focus should be on creating a fair and compassionate immigration system, not on building walls and closing borders. Environmental policies have also come under fire. The administration's rollback of environmental regulations, its withdrawal from international climate agreements, and its support for the fossil fuel industry have sparked outrage among environmental activists and concerned citizens alike. Protesters argue that these policies prioritize short-term economic gains over the long-term health of the planet and the well-being of future generations. They demand a shift towards sustainable practices and a commitment to combating climate change. The hands-off protests are a rejection of this perceived assault on progress. They represent a demand for a more inclusive, just, and equitable society, one that values diversity, protects the environment, and upholds the rights of all its citizens. The protests are a reminder that social progress is not inevitable. It requires constant vigilance and a willingness to fight for what is right. Section 5. A Sea of Dissent, mapping the protests across America. The hands-off. Protests are not confined to a single city or region. They are a nationwide phenomenon, a wave of dissent washing over the entire country. From the bustling metropolises of the East Coast to the sprawling cities of the West, from the heartland to the Sun Belt, Americans are taking to the streets to make their voices heard. This is not just a coastal elite movement, it's a groundswell of anger and frustration that transcends geographic and demographic boundaries. In Washington, D.C., hundreds of thousands gathered near the White House, their chants echoing through the halls of power. The air crackled with a mix of anger and determination as speakers denounced the administration's policies and called for a return to sanity. Similar scenes played out in New York City, where a sea of humanity flooded Times Square, their voices rising in unison to demand change. From Boston to Philadelphia, from Chicago to Los Angeles, major cities became focal points for the protests, their streets transformed into rivers of dissent. But the protests were not limited to urban centers. In small towns and rural communities across the country, people gathered in town squares, at courthouses, and along Main Street, their numbers smaller but their message no less powerful. In the heartland, where reliance on social safety nets is often a matter of survival, the protests took on a particular urgency. Farmers, teachers, factory workers, and small business owners stood shoulder to shoulder, united by a common fear for their future. The nationwide scope of the protests is a testament to the depth of anger and anxiety felt by millions of Americans. It's a clear indication that the current administration's policies have struck a nerve, awakening a sleeping giant of dissent. The message is clear. This is not a partisan issue. It's about fundamental values, about the kind of society we want to live in. And from the looks of it, Americans are not backing down. Section 6. Voices of change. Who's organizing and speaking out? The hands-off. Protests are not the result of a top-down movement orchestrated by a single organization. Instead, they have emerged organically, fueled by a groundswell of anger and frustration. This is a true grassroots movement, powered by the energy and passion of ordinary citizens from all walks of life. Within this diverse movement, key voices have emerged, helping to amplify the message and mobilize the masses. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP and the ACLU have played a pivotal role in organizing and coordinating the protests. Their experience in grassroots organizing has been invaluable in channeling the raw energy of the protests into a powerful force for change. Labor unions, representing millions of workers, have also been instrumental in mobilizing their members to participate in the protests. They have organized rallies, marches, and strikes, bringing the might of their collective bargaining power to bear on the fight for social justice. Religious groups have also lent their voices to the chorus of dissent, organizing prayer vigils, interfaith services, and marches. The hands-off. Protests are a testament to the power of collective action, a reminder that when people come together, they can achieve extraordinary things. This is a movement fueled by hope, by the belief that a better world is possible, by the refusal to accept the erosion of hard-won rights and freedoms. It is a movement that shows no signs of slowing down. President Trump has always been a man of action, a leader who believes in getting things done swiftly and decisively. Since his return to the Oval Office, he has wasted no time in putting his stamp on America's future, making bold moves that reflect his vision for the country. Through a series of sweeping executive orders, he has set in motion a bold agenda that promises to reshape the nation's landscape on issues ranging from immigration and the environment to healthcare and the economy. These executive orders, bypassing the traditional legislative process, have sent shockwaves through the country, igniting fierce debates about the limits of presidential power and the balance between economic growth and environmental protection. The fundamental values that define America's identity are now being questioned and re-evaluated. Trump's supporters hail him as a decisive leader, a man of his word who is finally delivering on the promises that resonated with millions of Americans. His critics, however, view these actions with alarm, warning of dire consequences for the environment, the rule of law, and the most vulnerable members of society. They see in these executive orders a dangerous expansion of presidential authority, a disregard for democratic norms, and a willingness to prioritize short-term gains over long-term sustainability. As the nation grapples with the implications of Trump's actions, one thing is clear: America is at a crossroads, facing a moment of profound consequence. The choices made today will have far-reaching implications, shaping the nation's destiny for generations to come. The future of America hangs in the balance, and the actions taken now will determine the path forward. It is a time for reflection, debate, and ultimately, decision-making that will define the character and values of the nation. The stakes have never been higher, and the world watches as America navigates this critical juncture in its history. The road ahead is uncertain, but the resolve of the American people will be the guiding force in shaping a future that honors the past while embracing progress. In this pivotal moment, every decision counts, and the legacy of today's actions will be felt for generations. The choices made today will have far-reaching implications, shaping the nation's destiny for generations to come. The future is in our hands, and it is up to us to ensure that it is a future we can be proud of. President Trump's return to the White House has brought with it a renewed focus on immigration enforcement, a topic that has been a cornerstone of his political identity since his first campaign. His administration has wasted no time in implementing a series of measures aimed at stemming the flow of undocumented immigrants into the country and increasing deportations. These actions have been swift and decisive, reflecting his commitment to his campaign promises. One of the most controversial aspects of this crackdown is the expansion of the criteria for expedited removal, a fast-track deportation process that bypasses traditional immigration courts. This policy change has significant implications for many undocumented immigrants. Under the new guidelines, undocumented immigrants who cannot prove they have been in the country continuously for at least 2 years can be subject to immediate deportation without the opportunity to appear before a judge. This has raised serious concerns among legal experts and human rights advocates. This policy has been met with widespread criticism from immigrant rights groups, who argue that it violates due process rights and puts vulnerable individuals, including asylum seekers and victims of trafficking, at risk of being unjustly deported. The lack of judicial oversight is particularly troubling to many. The fear and uncertainty generated by these policies have had a chilling effect on immigrant communities, driving many into the shadows and making them less likely to report crimes or cooperate with law enforcement. This has broader implications for public safety and community trust. The Trump administration argues that these measures are necessary to secure the border, deter illegal immigration, and protect national security. They believe that strict enforcement is the only way to address the complex issues at the border. They point to the ongoing crisis at the southern border, where record numbers of migrants continue to arrive, overwhelming resources and posing significant challenges for law enforcement. The situation is described as a humanitarian and security crisis. However, critics argue that these policies are cruel, ineffective, and counterproductive. They believe that a more humane and comprehensive approach is needed to address the root causes of migration. They point out that the vast majority of undocumented immigrants are not criminals, but hardworking individuals who contribute significantly to the economy. These individuals often take on jobs that are essential, yet undesirable to many citizens. They also argue that mass deportations would tear apart families, devastate communities, and harm the economy. The social and economic costs of such policies could be profound and long-lasting. The debate over immigration enforcement continues to be a deeply polarizing issue, with strong arguments on both sides. As the nation grapples with these complex challenges, the impact on immigrant communities remains a critical concern. In his quest to unleash American economic might, President Trump has taken aim at what he views as burdensome regulations. particularly those aimed at protecting the environment. His administration has systematically rolled back a wide range of environmental protections, arguing that they stifle economic growth, hinder job creation, and put American businesses at a competitive disadvantage. One of the most significant regulatory rollbacks has been the weakening of the Clean Power Plan, a signature Obama-era policy aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. The Trump administration has argued that the plan was overly burdensome on the energy industry and would lead to job losses and higher energy prices. Similarly, the administration has moved to open up vast areas of federal land and offshore waters to oil and gas drilling, reversing course on Obama-era policies that prioritize conservation and renewable energy development. This move has been welcomed by the energy industry, which sees it as an opportunity to tap into vast reserves of domestic oil and gas. However, environmental groups have condemned these rollbacks, warning that they will have devastating consequences for the planet, accelerating climate change, polluting air and water, and jeopardizing public health. They argue that the Trump administration is prioritizing short-term economic gains over the long-term health of the planet and future generations. Healthcare has been a perennial flashpoint in American politics, with debates often becoming heated and deeply personal. President Trump's return to office has reignited the debate over the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, a law that has been both praised and criticized since its inception. While Trump has repeatedly vowed to repeal and replace the ACA, promising a better alternative, his efforts to do so have so far been unsuccessful, facing significant opposition in Congress. However, that has not stopped his administration from taking steps to undermine the law through various executive actions and policy changes, including cutting subsidies to insurers, shortening the enrollment period, and reducing outreach efforts to inform people about their options. Additionally, the administration has weakened the individual mandate, which requires most Americans to have health insurance, a key component of the ACA designed to ensure a broad insurance pool. These actions have led to higher premiums and deductibles for millions of Americans, particularly those who purchase insurance through the ACA marketplaces, making healthcare less affordable for many. The Trump administration argues that the ACA is a flawed law that has driven up costs and reduced choice for consumers, and that their actions are necessary to stabilize the individual health insurance market. They believe that by reducing government intervention, they can provide Americans with more affordable healthcare options and greater freedom to choose their plans. However, Democrats and healthcare advocates argue that the Trump administration's actions are sabotaging the ACA and jeopardizing the healthcare of millions of Americans, particularly the most vulnerable. They point out that the ACA has provided health insurance to millions of previously uninsured Americans, offering them access to necessary medical care. The law has also helped to slow the growth of healthcare costs, making it more sustainable in the long run. They warn that the Trump administration's efforts to undermine the law will lead to higher costs, fewer choices, and millions of Americans losing their health insurance, exacerbating the healthcare crisis. The future of healthcare in America remains uncertain, with the two parties deeply divided on how to best provide affordable, quality healthcare to all Americans. As the debate continues, millions of Americans are left in limbo, unsure of what the future holds for their healthcare needs. The stakes are high, and the decisions made in the coming months and years will have profound impacts on the lives of countless individuals and families. With the two parties deeply divided on how to best provide affordable, quality healthcare to all Americans, the path forward remains unclear. Section 5. Legal and Constitutional Challenges, a Battleground for Power. In the wake of these executive orders, supporters have praised the bold leadership, seeing it as a necessary step to address urgent issues. On the other hand, critics argue that this represents a troubling overreach of executive power, raising concerns about the balance of governance. This period marks a pivotal moment for America. The decisions made now will shape the nation's trajectory for years to come. It's a time of significant change, filled with both opportunities and challenges. Across the country, stories from the front lines highlight the real-world impacts of these executive orders. From healthcare workers to small business owners, individuals are navigating a landscape that is rapidly evolving. As the nation grapples with these changes, it stands divided. The future remains uncertain, with many Americans wondering what lies ahead. It's a time of reflection and anticipation, as the country looks towards a new chapter. The global stock market has been on a turbulent ride recently, primarily fueled by a series of tariff announcements and counter-announcements. Investors around the world have been on edge, watching every move and statement from key political figures. The uncertainty has created a volatile environment where market sentiment can shift dramatically within hours. The drama began with President Trump's decision to impose a new round of tariffs on Chinese goods. This bold move was intended to pressure China into making trade concessions, but it also risked escalating tensions between the two economic superpowers. This move sent shockwaves through the market, leading to a sharp decline in major indices. Traders and investors were quick to react, fearing the potential fallout from a prolonged trade conflict. The immediate impact was a significant drop in stock prices, wiping out billions of dollars in market value. Investors, already jittery about the ongoing trade war, reacted with panic, selling off stocks and seeking safer havens. The rush to offload risky assets led to a surge in demand for gold and government bonds, which are traditionally seen as safe investments during times of uncertainty. The situation escalated further as China retaliated with its own set of tariffs on American products. This tit-for-tat exchange heightened fears of a full-blown trade war, pushing the market further into a tailspin. The global economy seemed to be on the brink of a significant downturn. This tit-for-tat exchange heightened fears of a full-blown trade war, pushing the market further into a tailspin. The uncertainty surrounding the future of global trade relations left investors grappling for answers, unsure of how to navigate the volatile landscape. The uncertainty surrounding the future of global trade relations left investors grappling for answers, unsure of how to navigate the volatile landscape. Financial advisors were inundated with calls from concerned clients, all seeking guidance on how to protect their investments. Adding to the confusion, President Trump announced a 90-day pause on most global tariffs, excluding those on China. This unexpected move triggered a massive market rally, with major indices posting their largest gains in years. Investors were momentarily relieved, but the underlying issues remained unresolved. This unexpected move triggered a massive market rally, with major indices posting their largest gains in years. The sudden surge in stock prices brought a wave of optimism, but it was clear that the market was still on shaky ground. The pause, however, did little to alleviate the underlying concerns about the trade war with China, leaving the market in a state of uneasy anticipation. Investors knew that the pause was only a temporary reprieve, and the specter of further tariffs loomed large. The recent tariff drama underscores the profound impact of trade policy on global markets. It serves as a stark reminder that even the mere suggestion of a trade war can send shockwaves through the global economy. The interconnected nature of today's financial systems means that no market is immune to the ripple effects of such policies. It serves as a stark reminder that even the mere suggestion of a trade war can send shockwaves through the global economy. Financial experts have been vocal about the need for more stable and predictable trade policies to ensure long-term economic growth. As the world waits to see what the next move will be, one thing is certain: the stock market roller coaster is far from over. Investors and analysts alike will be closely monitoring every development, ready to react to the next twist in this ongoing saga. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the Nasdaq Composite, two of the most closely watched stock market indices, have been on a wild ride in recent days, mirroring the volatility sparked by the tariff drama. Investors have been on edge, reacting to every new development with heightened sensitivity. The uncertainty surrounding the trade negotiations has created a roller coaster effect, with significant swings in both directions. The Dow Jones, which tracks 30 large publicly owned companies, plummeted sharply following the initial tariff announcements, reflecting the widespread fear gripping the market. This drop was not just a number on a screen, it represented the anxiety of millions of investors and the potential impact on the broader economy. The fear was palpable, with many wondering how deep the decline would go. The Nasdaq, heavily weighted towards technology companies, experienced an even steeper decline, highlighting the vulnerability of the tech sector to trade tensions. Tech giants, which had been riding high on years of growth, suddenly found themselves facing an uncertain future. The potential for increased costs and disrupted supply chains sent shockwaves through the industry. The imposition of tariffs on Chinese goods, many of which are integral components in tech products, threatened to disrupt supply chains and increase costs for tech giants. Companies that rely on these components were forced to reconsider their strategies, potentially passing on the increased cost to consumers. The ripple effects of these tariffs were felt across the globe, affecting not just the tech sector, but the entire economy. However, the market sentiment shifted dramatically following President Trump's announcement of a 90-day tariff pause. This unexpected development provided a glimmer of hope for investors who had been bracing for the worst. The announcement was seen as a potential turning point, offering a temporary reprieve from the escalating trade tensions. The Dow Jones surged by over 2,900 points, marking its biggest single-day point gain in history, while the Nasdaq soared by over 12%, its best day in nearly 2 decades. This dramatic rebound was a testament to the market's volatility and the power of positive news. Investors who had been on edge suddenly found themselves in a more optimistic mood. This dramatic turnaround underscores the sensitivity of the market to even the slightest hint of a resolution to the trade war. The rapid shifts in market sentiment highlight the precarious nature of the current economic environment. Investors are quick to react, whether to positive or negative news, making the market highly unpredictable. While the 90-day pause provided a much-needed reprieve, the underlying uncertainty remains, leaving investors on edge and the market poised for further volatility. The future of the trade negotiations is still unclear, and any new developments could trigger another round of market turbulence. Investors are watching closely, ready to react to the next piece of news. The ongoing tariff saga has had a profound impact on various sectors of the economy, creating ripples that have been felt far and wide. Among the hardest hit are the technology and manufacturing sectors, which have borne the brunt of the uncertainty and volatility. Tech giants like Apple, Nvidia, and Tesla, heavily reliant on Chinese manufacturing and components, initially saw their stock prices plummet as tariffs threatened to disrupt their supply chains and erode profit margins. The fear of increased costs and potential delays in production schedules added to the market's anxiety. The manufacturing sector, already grappling with rising input costs and slowing global demand, faced further headwinds as tariffs increased the cost of imported raw materials and finished goods. This sector, which is the backbone of many economies, found itself in a precarious position. Companies like Boeing, Caterpillar, and 3M, heavily exposed to international trade, saw their stock prices tumble as investors worried about the impact of tariffs on their bottom lines. The uncertainty surrounding future trade policies made it difficult for these companies to plan and invest confidently. The 90-day tariff pause provided some relief to these sectors, with tech and manufacturing stocks leading the market rally. This temporary reprieve allowed companies to catch their breath and reassess their strategies. However, the reprieve is likely to be temporary as the underlying trade tensions remain unresolved. The market remains on edge, with every new development closely scrutinized by investors and analysts alike. The uncertainty surrounding the future of U.S.-China trade relations continues to cast a shadow over these sectors, leaving investors wary and businesses struggling to adapt to the unpredictable landscape. The long-term impact of these trade tensions remains to be seen, but for now, caution prevails. The recent market volatility has left economists and market analysts scrambling to make sense of the situation, with opinions ranging from cautious optimism to dire warnings of a looming recession. Some experts believe that the 90-day tariff pause provides a window of opportunity for the U.S. and China to negotiate a trade deal, potentially averting a full-blown trade war. However, others are less optimistic, pointing to the deep divisions between the two economic superpowers and the lack of progress in previous negotiations. They argue that the tariff pause is merely a temporary reprieve, and the underlying trade tensions are likely to resurface, leading to renewed market volatility. Adding to the uncertainty, some economists warn that the tariffs, even if temporary, could have a significant impact on the global economy. They argue that the tariffs could disrupt global supply chains, increase inflation, and dampen consumer spending, potentially pushing the world economy into a recession. The conflicting opinions and predictions highlight the complexity of the situation and the difficulty in forecasting the long-term impact of the trade war. The global market, it's constantly changing. Every day brings new challenges and opportunities. It's not just about numbers and charts, it's about understanding the forces at play. From geopolitical tensions to technological advancements, everything, well, it all has a ripple effect, and sometimes these changes can be quite unpredictable. But amidst all this flux, there's always a chance to adapt and thrive. The key is really staying informed and being prepared for whatever comes next. In times of market volatility, it's crucial for investors to remain calm and avoid making impulsive decisions. Diversification is key. Spreading investments across different asset classes can help mitigate risks. Long-term strategies often yield better results than trying to time the market. It's also important to stay informed and consult with financial advisors to make well-rounded decisions. The ongoing trade war continues to create uncertainty in global markets. Tariffs and counter-tariffs between major economies have disrupted supply chains and increased costs for businesses and consumers alike. Investors need to be aware of these geopolitical tensions and consider their potential impacts on various sectors. Recently, we've seen a temporary lull in the trade tensions. Some analysts believe this could be a sign of hope, suggesting that negotiations might lead to a more stable trading environment. However, it's important to remain cautious, as the situation could change rapidly. Keeping an eye on policy announcements and economic indicators will be essential. Looking ahead, the future of global trade remains uncertain. Technological advancements, shifting political landscapes, and environmental concerns will all play significant roles in shaping trade policies. Investors should be prepared for both opportunities and challenges as the global economy evolves. Staying adaptable and informed will be key to navigating this complex landscape.